My childhood was defined by a family dynamic that felt more like a prison than a home. At just 4 years old, my life took a sharp turn when my mother remarried after my father's death. Her new husband brought with him a 17-year-old son, Chris, who was 13 years older than me. From the very beginning, it was clear that I was an outsider in this new family. My mother, who had always longed for a son, saw Chris as the child she never had. She adored him, calling him her perfect son, while I was treated as little more than a burdened daughter who could never live up to her expectations. My stepfather, though not overtly cruel, was distant and uninvolved, leaving my mother to dictate the family's priorities. Chris, as the eldest and only son, became the center of their world. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. I, on the other hand, was constantly reminded of my inadequacy. My mother never missed an opportunity to tell me how much easier her life would have been if I'd been born a boy. Her words were like knives, cutting deeper with each passing day. The favoritism was blatant and painful. Chris was praised for every little thing, while my achievements were ignored or dismissed. I was left to navigate a household where I felt invisible, unwanted, and utterly alone. My mother's obsession with Chris created a toxic environment where I was constantly reminded of my inferiority. She made it clear that I was the problem, the disappointment who ruined her dreams of having a perfect family. This imbalance set the stage for the chaos that would define my childhood. Chris, emboldened by my mother's adoration, grew into a figure of authority in our household, while I was left to fend for myself in a world that seemed determined to break me. The seeds of resentment and neglect were sown early, and they would grow into a nightmare I could never have imagined. Chris's cruelty began as bullying but quickly escalated into something far more sinister, leaving scars that would haunt me for a lifetime. From the moment our families merged, he saw me as a target, a helpless little girl he could torment without consequence. His abuse started small but was calculated to break me down. He would lock me in the guest bathroom or the shed outside for hours, leaving me in the dark, crying and begging to be let out. At school, he'd steal my lunchbox, leaving me hungry and humiliated in front of my classmates. But his cruelty didn't stop there. He had a particular hatred for my cat, the one living being that brought me comfort. More than once, I caught him trying to run her over with his car, laughing as I screamed, and begged him to stop. My parents never believed me when I told them what he was doing. To them, Chris was the golden child, the perfect son who could do no wrong. As I entered puberty, Chris's abuse took a darker, more horrifying turn. He began invading my privacy in ways that still make my skin crawl. He would walk in on me while I was showering, using a long key to unlock the bathroom door. My underwear would go missing, and I knew it was him. He even took pictures of me while I slept, invading my most vulnerable moments. One night, I woke up to find him next to my bed, touching himself while watching me. I screamed, but when my parents came, they blamed me. I was 14 and he was 27. My mother told me I had tempted him, that it was my fault. That moment shattered any hope I had of being protected or loved by her. Chris's abuse reached its peak when I was 16. He sexually assaulted me, an act that left me broken and traumatized. When I tried to speak up, my mother dismissed me, accusing me of lying and defending Chris. Her betrayal cut deeper than his actions. I was alone, trapped in a nightmare with no one to turn to until I found the courage to escape. But even then, the scars of his abuse would never fully heal. By the time I turned 16, I knew I couldn't survive another day in that house. Chris's abuse had reached its peak, and my mother's betrayal had left me with no hope of protection. Desperate and broken, I reached out to the only person I thought might help my half-brother. Sam, the son of my biological father's first wife, was a stranger to me in many ways, but he became my lifeline. When I called him, trembling and tearful, and told him what I'd endured, he didn't hesitate. He and his wife, Sandy, immediately offered me a safe haven. Leaving my mother's house was both terrifying and liberating. I packed what little I could, including my beloved cat and the family dog, knowing I couldn't leave any living creature behind with Chris. My mother didn't even try to stop me. In fact, she seemed relieved, telling Sam to take me as long as he never asked her for money. Her cold indifference was the final confirmation of what I had always known. I was never truly her daughter in her eyes. Sam and Sandy became my legal guardians, and for the first time in my life, I felt safe. They treated me with kindness and respect, something I had never experienced in my own home. With their support and the help of my paternal family, I was able to finish high school and pursue higher education. My father's family rallied around me, ensuring I had the resources to earn my bachelor's and master's degrees without the burden of student debt. Their unwavering belief in me gave me the strength to rebuild my life. Today, at 29, I am a nurse practitioner with a stable career and a future I can be proud of. I still live with Sam, Sandy, and their 2 children, paying a small rent as a token of gratitude for everything they've done for me. They never asked for anything in return, but I owe them my life. Without them, I would have been lost forever in the darkness Chris and my mother created. Just when I thought I had left my past behind, my mother and Chris came crashing back into my life, bringing chaos and fear with them. After years of silence, my mother reached out to me, her tone unerringly friendly. She claimed she missed me and wanted to reconnect, but her true intentions quickly became clear. She began asking about my salary as a nurse practitioner, probing for details about my finances. Then she dropped the bombshell. Chris, now drowning in student debt after failing to finish his degree, needed my help. She demanded that I pay off his loans, insisting that it was my duty as his stepsister. When I refused, her tone turned venomous. She accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, claiming I owed her for raising me. But it didn't stop there. One day, while I was alone at Sam's house, my mother and Chris showed up unannounced. They banged on the door, screaming that I owed them money and respect. Chris, ever the predator, prowled around the house, trying to find an unlocked window or door. He even cracked a window with his pounding, shouting vile insults at me through the glass. My mother, meanwhile, screamed that I was a burden who should have been thrown away as a baby. Her words cut deep, but I refused to open the door. Thankfully, Sam arrived just in time. He dragged them off the porch, his voice shaking with rage as he threatened to press charges for what Chris had done to me years ago. My stepfather, surprisingly, offered to testify against his own son, revealing that Chris had a history of predatory behavior. But even this wasn't enough to stop my mother. She began harassing me nonstop, sending texts and calls from different numbers, rallying strangers who claimed to be my maternal relatives to demand money. She even accused me of trying to ruin Chris's life, twisting the narrative to paint herself as the victim. Their return was a nightmare, but it also gave me the strength to fight back. With Sam's help, I began taking legal action, determined to protect myself from their toxicity once and for all. Enough was enough. After years of abuse, betrayal, and harassment, I decided to fight back. With Sam by my side, I began taking legal action against my mother and Chris, determined to hold them accountable for the pain they had caused. Our first step was to reclaim what was rightfully my inheritance from my late father. Through my father's liar, we discovered that my mother had been fraudulently siphoning money from my trust fund for years. She had fabricated receipts, claiming expenses for my education and care, even though I had been under Sam's guardianship since I was 16. The betrayal was staggering, but it also gave us the evidence we needed to pursue legal action. As we prepared our case, my mother escalated her attacks. She took to social media, posting false accusations that painted me as the villain. She claimed I had tried to seduce Chris, twisting the narrative to make herself and her golden child look like victims. She even recruited strangers who claimed to be my maternal relatives to join her campaign, spreading lies about me to anyone who would listen. The online harassment was relentless, but I refused to let it break me. Meanwhile, Chris's behavior grew even more alarming. He was arrested for kidnapping a 2-year-old relative, a chilling reminder of the danger he posed. This incident strengthened our case, as it highlighted his predatory nature and added weight to our claims. My stepfather, who had finally turned against his own son, agreed to testify against Chris, revealing the full extent of his abuse. The legal battle was exhausting, but it was also empowering. For the first time, I felt like I was taking control of my life. Sam and Sandy stood by me every step of the way, offering unwavering support and encouragement. Together, we were determined to see justice served, no matter how long it took. Just when I thought Chris couldn't sink any lower, he proved me wrong. In a shocking turn of events, Chris was arrested for kidnapping a 2-year-old girl, his own cousin's daughter. The news sent chills down my spine, a grim reminder of the predator he had always been. The little girl was thankfully found unharmed, but the incident exposed the depth of his depravity. It was a stark confirmation of everything I had endured and a wake-up call to those who had once dismissed his behavior as harmless. The arrest strengthened our legal case, as it highlighted the danger he posed to others, not just to me. Meanwhile, my mother's harassment reached new heights. Desperate to control me, she began exploiting my personal information, using my social security number to access funds and manipulate my finances. Realizing the extent of her deceit, I took immediate action. With Sam's help, I froze my credit and began the process of changing my personal information to protect myself from further exploitation. It was a frustrating and exhausting ordeal, but it was necessary to reclaim my independence and security. The legal battles continued to escalate. My stepfather, finally breaking his silence, agreed to testify against Chris, revealing the full extent of his son's abusive behavior. This testimony, combined with the evidence of financial fraud and Chris's recent arrest, gave us a stronger case than ever before. Still, my mother refused to back down. She continued to spread lies about me online, rallying strangers to her cause and painting herself as the victim. Despite the chaos, I found moments of solace with Sam, Sandy, and their children. Their unwavering support kept me grounded, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. As I prepared for the next steps in the legal process, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Chris's arrest was a turning point, and I was ready to see justice served not just for me, but for everyone he had hurt. Throughout the chaos and pain, one thing remained constant: the unwavering support of those who truly cared about me. Sam and Sandy, my half-brother and sister-in-law, became my pillars of strength. From the moment they took me in at 16, they provided not just a safe haven, but a loving home where I could heal and rebuild. They stood by me through every battle, from confronting my mother and Chris to helping me navigate the legal system. Sam's fierce protectiveness and Sandy's nurturing kindness gave me the courage to keep fighting, even when the weight of it all felt unbearable. But their support didn't stop there. When my mother and Chris began harassing me again, Sam didn't hesitate to step in, threatening legal action and shielding me from their toxicity. Sandy, too, became a fierce advocate, offering both emotional support and practical help as I froze my credit and changed my personal information to protect myself from further exploitation. Beyond my family, I found unexpected allies in my colleagues, lawyer, and even the online community. My boss at work granted me time off and helped me navigate the stress of the situation, while my lawyer worked tirelessly to build a strong case against my mother and Chris. Online, strangers who had followed my story offered encouragement and advice, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. Their collective support became my lifeline, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there are people who will stand by you. With their help, I found the strength to face each new challenge, determined to reclaim my life and my future. After years of enduring abuse, betrayal, and harassment, I've finally reached a point where I can focus on healing and rebuilding my life. Currently, I'm taking a much-needed break, prioritizing my mental health as I prepare for the upcoming legal battles against my mother and Chris. The road ahead is daunting, but with Sam, Sandy, and my supportive network by my side, I feel stronger than ever. The recent arrest of Chris for kidnapping a 2-year-old girl has added a new layer of urgency to our case. It's a chilling reminder of the danger he poses, and it has strengthened our resolve to see justice served. Meanwhile, my mother continues her relentless campaign of lies and manipulation, but I refuse to let her break me. I've frozen my credit and taken steps to secure my personal information, ensuring she can no longer exploit me financially. Looking ahead, I've set my sights on a brighter future. Once the legal battles are over, I plan to use the remaining funds from my trust to buy a home, finally achieving the stability I've always dreamed of. It won't be easy, but I'm determined to reclaim my life and build a future free from the shadows of my past.